poor girl saved the CEO from being hit by a truck, but when he saw his family's lost necklace on her, he froze. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Silas Dawn didn't even look up from his laptop screen, just hit the reject button. It was the fourth call in 10 minutes. Probably someone from the marketing team wanting to discuss numbers he'd already approved last week. Mr. Dawn? His assistant's voice echoed through the intercom. I'm not available for anyone, Sarah. But it's about the meeting for... Reschedule. Silence. Silas returned to typing, his fingers dancing across the keyboard with the precision of someone who had made work their only reason for existence. At 32, he ran one of the biggest tech companies on the West Coast. He had a penthouse on the top floor of the city's most expensive building, a car that cost more than most people's houses, and a schedule so packed he barely remembered the last time he ate lunch without looking at spreadsheets. The clock was nearing 7 in the evening when he finally closed his laptop. The office had been empty for hours. Even Sarah had left, leaving only a note on his desk. The folders you asked for are in the archive. Good night, Mr. Dawn. Silas put some documents into his leather briefcase and walked to the elevator. The mirror on the doors reflected his image, an impeccable suit, hair always in place, tired eyes that showed no emotion. It was exactly the image he cultivated. Controlled, distant, efficient. The street was busy for a weekday. Cars sped by, people hurried along the sidewalks, each immersed in their own world. Silas crossed the first intersection without looking, his mind still processing the financial reports he had just reviewed. Perhaps that's why he didn't see the truck. The driver honked desperately. Tires screeched on the asphalt. Silas looked up just in time to see the metal grille heading straight for him, the headlights blinding him completely. That's when he felt the tug. Small hands grabbed the cuff of his trousers with surprising strength, making him stumble backward. The truck grazed past so close that Silas felt the wind displaced by its body. Hey! You almost became a pancake. Silas looked down, still in shock. A little girl with curly brown hair stared at him with an expression too serious for someone who looked about 5 years old. She wore a pink t-shirt with butterfly designs and faded denim shorts. Her sneakers were too small and tied with mismatched laces. Thank you. That was all he could manage. My grandma always says you have to look both ways before crossing. You didn't do that. The girl was right. Silas ran a hand over his face, trying to process what had happened. In seconds, his life could have ended right there, on the corner of Fifth Avenue, because he was distracted thinking about spreadsheets. You're right. I didn't look. He knelt to be at her height. What's your name? Josie. She shook her curls. And you? Silas. It was at that moment that he saw it. Hanging around the girl's delicate neck was a simple necklace, a thin gold chain with a heart-shaped pendant. It wasn't just any heart. It was a specific heart, with a small crack in the middle and an initial engraved in the lower right corner. The initial M, the world stopped. Silas knew that necklace. He had bought it at a small jewelry store downtown when he was 16, with money he'd saved from working after school. It was a birthday present for his mother, Margaret Dawn. She wore it every day, even when she was hospitalized, even when chemotherapy treatments left her too weak to get out of bed. When she died 3 years later, the necklace disappeared. Silas searched every corner of the house, rummaged through every drawer, every nook. He thought a hospital employee or funeral home worker had taken it. It was the only thing he wanted to keep of hers, and it was gone. Now it was there, around the neck of a little girl who had just saved him from being hit by a truck. Josie, he said, his voice rougher than usual. That necklace, where did you get it? She brought her hand to her chest, touching the pendant carefully. My grandma gave it to me. It's my treasure. Her eyes sparkled. Why? Do you like it? Silas couldn't speak. How could he explain to a 5-year-old that she was wearing the only keepsake he had of his mother? How could he ask where her grandma had gotten it without sounding like a crazy person? It's very beautiful, he finally managed to say. Josie's stomach rumbled loud enough for both of them to hear. She placed her hands on her belly and laughed. I think I'm hungry. You want to get something to eat? The question slipped out before Silas could think better of it. As a thank you for saving me. The girl's eyes widened. Really? But I don't have any money. I'll pay. It's the least I can do. Josie bit her lower lip, thinking, my grandma always says not to go with strangers. Your grandma is right, but how about we stay somewhere public? There's a diner right there on the corner. Silas pointed to a small family-owned restaurant with outdoor tables. We can sit where everyone can see. The girl looked at the diner, then at Silas, then at the diner again. Do they have chocolate milkshake? Let's find out. The diner was the kind of place Silas would never normally frequent. The tables had red and white checkered tablecloths. The menu was handwritten on a chalkboard, and the smell of burgers mixed with French fries dominated the air. But Josie seemed enchanted. Wow, look at all these options. She pointed to the menu as if she was seeing a treasure. And they even have strawberry milkshake. Silas ordered a simple burger for himself and a chocolate milkshake with fries for Josie. She insisted it was her favorite combination in the whole world. So, Josie, he began when the food arrived, do you live nearby? Not too far. My grandma and I live in a little house. She dipped a French fry into her milkshake, which made Silas wrinkle his nose. Grandma Martha always says our house is small, but it has a lot of love. Martha is your grandma's name. Martha Ray. She's the best grandma in the whole world. Josie took a sip of her milkshake. Shashi knows how to make the best pancakes and always tells me stories before bed. That's nice. You two must have a lot of fun together. We do. We have a tiny garden with flowers. Grandma Martha teaches me all their names. Josie swung her feet under the table. And she always says that every flower is special in its own way, just like people. Silas smiled for the first time in a long while. There was something about Josie's simplicity and joy that made him forget, even for a few minutes, the world of pressure and responsibilities that surrounded him. And you? Have you always lived with your grandma? Since I was very little. Josie shrugged, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Grandma Martha says some families are different, but they can all be happy just the same. Your grandma sounds like a very wise person. She is. She always knows what to say when I'm sad or scared. And she makes the best cookies in the world too. Josie ate a few more fries. She says life is like a garden. Sometimes some plants grow in different ways, but they can all be beautiful. The simplicity and wisdom behind the girl's words impressed Silas. He had grown up in a world where everything had to be perfect, where there was no room for differences or imperfections. Josie, on the other hand, seemed to accept life exactly as it was. And this necklace, he returned to the subject that most intrigued him, trying to keep his voice casual. Did your grandma tell you anything about it when she gave it to you? Josie touched the pendant again, tenderly. She just said it was very special, and that now it was mine. She smiled. It was for my last birthday, the best present I ever got. Silas felt a pang of frustration. Josie clearly knew nothing about the necklace's origin. Martha would be the only person who could answer his questions. You don't know how long your grandma has had this necklace? I don't know. Grandma Martha has many beautiful things kept in a special box. She always says they are treasures. Josie finished a few more fries. Why are you so interested in my necklace? Do you have one like it? The girl's direct question caught Silas off guard. For a moment, he considered telling the truth, but how could he explain such a complex story to a 5-year-old? It reminds me of someone very special, he finally said. That's cool. So our necklaces are special for different reasons, Josie smiled. Grandma Martha always says that special things find their way to the right people. Silas needed to meet Martha. He needed to know if his intuition was correct, if there truly was a connection between his mother and Josie's grandmother. But he couldn't just show up at their house without a plausible explanation. Josie, I was thinking, do you think your grandma would be upset if I went to thank her personally for you saving me today? After all, if it weren't for you, I could have been seriously hurt. The girl tilted her head, thinking, I don't think so. Grandma Martha likes it when people are polite and say thank you, and you were very polite to me. She finished her milkshake and wiped her mouth with a napkin. Do you want to go now? If you don't mind, and if your grandma isn't busy. She's never too busy to meet new people. Grandma Martha always says meeting different people makes life more interesting. Josie hopped off her chair. Let's go, she'll be so happy to meet you. Silas paid the bill, and they left the diner together. Night was falling. and they walked through the streets until they reached a neighborhood very different from the city center. The houses were smaller, closer together, and many needed repairs. There were no manicured lawns or expensive cars in garages. It was a simple place where people lived with what they had. Josie walked beside Silas, chattering about her grandma's garden flowers, about the book she was learning to read, and about how she liked to help prepare dinner. "So Grandma Martha says I'm a great helper in the kitchen. I can crack eggs without getting shells in the bowl," she said proudly. "That's very important," Silas replied, genuinely impressed by the girl's confidence. "It's right there." Josie pointed to the end of the street. "Our house." Silas looked in the direction she indicated and saw a small, simple house. The yellow paint was faded and peeling in some places. The white fence needed a fresh coat of paint, and the front garden, though well-maintained, was small and modest. Even so, there was something welcoming about the place. Warm light in the windows and the smell of homemade food in the air. "Are you nervous?" Josie asked, looking at him with curiosity. "A little," he admitted. "You don't need to be. Grandma Martha is very kind. She'll like you, I'm sure." Josie's confidence was contagious. Silas wondered when was the last time anyone had shown such certainty about him as a person, not as a CEO or successful businessman. "It's that one," Josie pointed to the small house. Silas could see the silhouette of a woman moving in the kitchen through the window. "Grandma Martha, Grandma Martha," Josie shouted, running towards the door. "I brought someone for you to meet." Silas followed more slowly, noticing the details of the place. The grass that needed mowing, the slightly worn wooden steps, the door that needed a new coat of varnish. It was a complete contrast to his world of luxury and perfection, but there was something genuine there that touched him in an unexpected way. In seconds, perhaps his life would completely change, or perhaps he'd discover he was chasing a meaningless coincidence. Either way, it was too late to turn back. The front door opened, revealing a woman with grey hair and a warm smile who looked first at Josie, then at Silas with genuine curiosity in her eyes. "Well," Martha Ray said, wiping her hands on a simple apron, "it looks like we have company." Martha Ray wiped her hands on her apron and gave a genuine smile. Her eyes, a faded but still bright blue, shifted from Josie to Silas with curiosity. She must have been in her 60s, her grey hair pulled back in a simple bun, and she wore a floral dress that had seen better days. "Grandma Martha, this is Silas." Josie ran to hug her grandma's legs. "He almost got run over, but I saved him. And now he wants to thank you." "Is that right?" Martha looked at Silas with renewed interest. "Well, anyone my Josie saved is welcome here. Please, come in." "Thank you, ma'am." Silas hesitated. "Martha, just Martha." She stepped away from the door, gesturing for him to enter. "And you must be Silas, right?" Josie has a habit of repeating names until she memorizes them. The house inside was exactly as Silas had imagined, small, simple, but incredibly cozy. The living room had an old but comfortable sofa, a few colorful cushions scattered about, and photographs of Josie covering almost every available surface. The smell of cinnamon and something baking in the oven filled the air. "Please, have a seat." Martha pointed to the sofa. "Josie, go wash your hands while I talk to Mr. Silas." "Can I stay, please?" Josie made a face. "I promise I'll be quiet." "You can stay, but no interrupting." Martha sat in the armchair opposite the sofa, her hands clasped in her lap. "So tell me what happened." Silas quickly recounted the near accident, how Josie had reacted quickly and pulled him away from the truck. Martha listened attentively, nodding at times. "Our Josie has always been smart like that." She looked at her granddaughter with pride. "Since she was little, she observes everything around her and acts when needed. Isn't that right, dear?" Josie nodded, clearly happy with the compliment. "I really don't know how to thank you," Silas continued. "If she hadn't acted so quickly." "No need to thank me. Josie did what any decent person would do." Martha smiled. "But I'm glad you came here. It shows you have good character." Silas looked at Josie, who was playing with the necklace, and felt his heart pound. It was now or never. "Actually, Martha, there's something that made me very curious." He tried to keep his voice casual. "The necklace Josie is wearing, It caught my eye because it's very similar to one I knew a long time ago. Martha followed Silas's gaze and noticed he was looking at the heart pendant around her granddaughter's neck. Oh, that necklace. Her expression softened, almost melancholic. It's truly special, isn't it? Josie told me you gave it to her. Yes, for her last birthday. Martha reached out to Josie, who came closer and leaned against the armchair's arm. It belonged to a patient of mine, one of the most special I ever had the privilege of caring for. Silas's heart nearly stopped. Patient. I'm a retired nurse, Martha explained simply. I worked for years caring for sick people in their homes, especially in their last moments of life. Silas swallowed hard. And this patient who had the necklace? A beautiful woman, inside and out. She was fighting a very aggressive cancer. Martha stroked Josie's hair absently. She was alone, you know. Her husband had left years before, and her son, well, he was an adult, but he always seemed too busy to visit her. The words hit Silas like a punch to the gut. He vaguely remembered the time his mother was sick. He was in college, then starting his career, always with the excuse that he was building a better future for the two of them, always promising he'd visit more, spend more time with her, that things would calm down after the next project, the next promotion. I cared for her for the last 6 months, Martha continued, not noticing the impact of her words on Silas. She was very brave, you know. Even when the pain became unbearable, she always tried to smile. She always asked about my family, about my problems. She was the kind of person who worried more about others than about herself. What was her name? Silas's voice came out almost as a whisper. Margaret Dawn. Martha looked at him with curiosity. Why do you ask? Did you know her? The world stopped. Silas felt as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. His hands began to tremble, and he had to hold onto the arm of the sofa to keep from collapsing. Margaret Dawn, he repeated, his voice cracking. Margaret Dawn was my mother. The silence that followed was deafening. Martha stood completely still, her eyes wide, processing what she had just heard. Josie looked from one to the other, confused by the sudden change in the conversation's mood. Your mother, Martha finally managed to speak. Yes. Silas ran his hands over his face, trying to compose himself. She died almost 16 years ago. I searched everywhere for that necklace after the funeral. I thought someone had stolen it. It was the only thing of hers I wanted to keep, and it was gone. Martha slowly rose from the armchair, her hands trembling slightly. Margaret always talked about a son, Silas. She looked at him with an expression of disbelief. She always said he was very smart, very dedicated to his work, that he was building a tech company. She talked about me, constantly. Martha sat on the edge of the armchair, as if her legs could no longer support her. In her last days, when she was very weak, she would hold this necklace and say she wanted you to know how much she loved you, that she understood why you were always busy, that she was proud of the man you had become. The words hit Silas like waves, one after another. He closed his eyes, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. She said that. Every day. Martha leaned forward. On her last day, she gave me the necklace. She said she wanted me to keep it for someone special, someone who needed to know they were loved. I never imagined I'd meet you one day. Josie, who had been silent throughout the conversation, finally spoke. So your mum's necklace became my necklace, and you're the son of the lady Grandma Martha took care of. Silas looked at her and, for the first time since he'd arrived, smiled through his tears. Looks like it, Josie. Martha stood up and walked to Silas. For a moment, he thought she was going to ask for the necklace back, and he didn't know if he could bear to lose it again. But instead, she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Your mother was an extraordinary woman, she said softly. And from what I'm seeing, she raised an extraordinary son, too. I wasn't a good son, Silas murmured. I was always working, always too busy to... She never said that, not once, Martha interrupted firmly. Everything she said about you was with pride, about how determined you were, how hard you worked to have a better life. She said you had inherited her strength and your father's intelligence. Silas finally lost control. The tears he had held back for so long began to fall, and he covered his face with his hands. All the guilt, all the regret of not having spent more time with his mother, of not having been present when she needed him most, surged to the surface all at once. Martha sat beside him on the sofa and, without a word, put her arm around his shoulders. Josie, following her grandma's example, came closer and held Silas's hand. "It's okay," the little girl said in her sweet voice. "Grandma Martha always says it's normal to cry when you miss someone special." And there, in that simple house, surrounded by two people he had only met a few hours ago, Silas finally allowed himself to feel all the pain he had kept hidden for so many years. But for the first time since his mother's death, he didn't feel completely alone. 3 days after meeting Martha, Silas found himself standing in front of a supermarket, looking at the overflowing shopping cart he had filled. It wasn't for him. He had left work at 5 in the afternoon, something he hadn't done in months, with the excuse that he had an important appointment. Technically, it wasn't a lie. He drove to Martha and Josie's neighborhood, carrying 2 heavy bags. When he knocked on the door, he heard running footsteps and Josie's excited voice shouting, "Grandma Martha, it's Silas." The door opened and Josie appeared with a huge smile on her face. "Hi, Silas, you came back." "Hi, Josie." He lifted the bags. "I brought you some things." Martha appeared behind her granddaughter, drying her hands on a towel. "Silas, what a surprise. But you didn't need to." "I wanted to." He held out the bags. "It's just a thank you for welcoming me so warmly." Martha hesitated for a moment, then accepted the bags. "Come in, please. I was just preparing dinner." In the small kitchen, Silas watched Martha take things out of the bags. Fresh fruit, milk, bread, some canned goods, cookies, nothing extravagant, but he had noticed on his previous visit that the pantry was quite basic. "This is very kind of you," Martha said, putting away the groceries. "But you really don't need to." "I'd like to keep visiting you both," Silas interrupted. "If you don't mind, it's just, you two are the only connection I have to my mother. And besides, I enjoy your company." Josie jumped into the chair next to him. "I want you to come over all the time. Can you teach me that card game you talked about?" "Of course I can." And so began a routine Silas never imagined he'd have. 2 or 3 times a week, he would leave work early and go to Martha and Josie's house. He always brought something: food, flowers for the garden, or small gifts for Josie. In the second week, he noticed the kitchen faucet was dripping. "How long has it been like that?" he asked. "A few months," Martha replied, distracted as she prepared dinner. "The neighbor said he could take a look when he has time. I can try to fix it now, if you have some basic tools." Martha stopped what she was doing. "You know how to fix faucets?" Silas laughed. "To believe it or not, before I had money to hire people, I used to fix everything in my apartment myself." Half an hour later, the faucet was working perfectly. Josie was impressed, turning the water on and off several times. "Wow, you're so smart, Silas. Anyone can learn to do this," he said, washing his hands. "It's just a matter of practice." The following week, it was the squeaky door hinge, then a burnt-out light bulb Martha couldn't reach. Small repairs that were simple for Silas, but made a huge difference in the house. "You're doing so much for us," Martha said one evening, while Josie played in the living room. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't understand," Silas replied, looking out the kitchen window at Josie, who was drawing on the floor. "I spend all my days in meetings, dealing with numbers and spreadsheets. Here, for the first time in years, I feel genuinely useful." And it was true. In that simple environment, without the constant pressure of work, without having to impress anyone or maintain a perfect image, Silas felt more himself than he had in a long time. He could sit on the floor with Josie to play. He could help Martha in the kitchen. He could simply exist without worrying about productivity or efficiency. Josie, for her part, had completely lost her initial shyness. She would run to the door whenever he arrived, tell him about her day with enthusiasm, and even started saving special drawings to show him. "Look what I made today," she said one Thursday afternoon. showing a drawing of 3 people in front of a yellow house. "It's all 3 of us." Silas took the paper and studied the drawing. He was depicted as a tall figure in a tie. Martha wore her characteristic apron, and Josie was in the middle, holding both their hands. "It's very beautiful, Josie. Can I keep it?" "Really, you want to keep my drawing?" "I do. I'll put it in my office." Josie's eyes sparkled with happiness. It was in moments like these that Silas realized how much his life had changed. 2 months ago, he worked late every day, ate lonely dinners in expensive restaurants, and his weekends were filled with more work or corporate events he attended out of obligation. Now, he planned his afternoons around his visits to Martha and Josie. He would cancel meetings to arrive earlier. He researched simple recipes he could make with Josie. He bought children's storybooks to read to her before leaving. "You're different," Martha observed one evening, while they watched Josie play with some wooden blocks Silas had brought. "Different how?" "More relaxed, less tense." She smiled. "Your mother would be happy to see you like this." Silas reflected on that. Perhaps Martha was right. Perhaps his mother would be happy to know that he had found something beyond work to give meaning to his life. It was on an especially quiet afternoon, almost a month after his first visit, that everything changed again. Silas was sitting on the living room floor with Josie, who was drawing intently on a large sheet of paper. Martha was in the kitchen, baking cookies. The smell of cinnamon and sugar filled the house. "What are you drawing today?" Silas asked. "A school," Josie replied, without looking up from the paper. "A school?" "Yes. With kids going to class, teachers, books." She showed him the drawing. "All the kids are happy." Silas looked at the drawing. It was more elaborate than the previous ones, showing a large building with several windows, figures of children carrying backpacks, and even a flag waving at the top. "Don't you like drawing schools?" Josie stopped coloring and looked at him with a serious expression. "I wish I could go to a real school." "What do you mean?" "All kids go to school. I see it on TV. I see it when I walk down the street. They have colorful backpacks, they make friends, they learn to read real books." Josie sighed. "I know some letters Grandma Martha taught me, but I can't read whole sentences." Silas felt a pang in his chest. "You've never been to school?" Josie shook her head. "Grandma Martha says it costs a lot of money, and that she can teach me at home, but I wanted to be like the other kids." She went back to coloring as if she had talked about something trivial, but Silas kept looking at her, processing what he had just heard. "Josie," he said carefully, "would you really like to go to school?" "I would." Her eyes sparkled. "I want to learn to read all the books, do hard math, meet other kids my age. Grandma Martha always talks about what school was like when she was little. It sounds like so much fun." "And have you told your grandma this?" "Yes. She gets sad and says that one day, when things get better, maybe she can put me in a school." Josie shrugged. "But I don't want to make Grandma Martha sad, so I don't talk about it anymore." Silas felt his heart ache. Here was an intelligent, curious, vibrant child, dreaming of something as basic as going to school, something he had always taken for granted. "Can I see your drawing again?" Josie handed him the paper. Silas studied every detail: the smiling children, the colorful books, the teacher at the front of the classroom. It was the drawing of someone who truly wished to be part of that world. "It's very beautiful," he finally said. "You drew it with a lot of love. It's because I dream about it every night." At that moment, Martha entered the room carrying a tray with warm cookies and milk. "What are you two doing?" "Josie showed me a beautiful drawing of a school," Silas said, looking meaningfully at Martha. Martha placed the tray on the table and looked at the drawing in Silas's hand. Her expression became melancholic. "She has a talent for drawing, doesn't she?" "A lot of talent." Silas chose his words carefully. "Martha, can I speak with you in the kitchen for a minute?" Martha nodded, and they went to the kitchen while Josie continued drawing. "Did she tell you about wanting to go to school?" Silas asked in a low voice. Martha sighed and leaned against the sink. "It's her biggest dream. But private schools cost a fortune, and to get a spot in public school, there's a lot of bureaucracy. Documents I don't have, proof of income." She shook her head. "I teach her what I can at home, but I know it's not the same." What if I helped? Martha looked at him in surprise. How do you mean? I could help with the private school costs. Or help with the paperwork for public school, whatever it takes. Silas, I can't accept that. You already do so much for us. Martha, he gently held her hands. My mother always said that education was the most important thing a person could have. She worked hard to give me the best study opportunities. To let Josie grow up without going to school would be a betrayal of her memory. Martha was silent for a long moment, her eyes welling up. Are you sure? Absolutely. Let me look into the options. I'll call some schools in the area tomorrow. Martha hugged him impulsively. Thank you. You don't know what this means to me, to her. When they returned to the living room, Josie had finished another drawing. This time, it was 3 people walking together towards a large building. That's us going to school, she explained cheerfully. Will you take me on the first day? Silas looked at the drawing, then at Josie's hopeful face, and felt a determination he hadn't felt in a long time. Of course we will, Josie. Of course we will. That night, driving back home, Silas couldn't wipe the smile off his face. For the first time in years, he had a goal that went beyond profits and business expansion. He was going to help an extraordinary child achieve her simplest, most fundamental dream, and somehow he knew his mother would be proud. Silas was helping Josie with a 100-piece puzzle when he heard a noise in the kitchen. It wasn't a loud sound, just the clatter of something falling to the floor, followed by a muffled groan. Grandma Martha. Josie looked up, worried. Silas quickly stood up and went to the kitchen. Martha was leaning against the sink, her face contorted in pain, a broken cup at her feet. Martha, what happened? It's nothing, she tried to smile, but the pain was evident. Just a twinge. It'll pass. But it didn't pass. Silas subtly watched her for the rest of the afternoon and noticed how slowly she moved, how she would occasionally pause to take a deep breath, how her hands trembled slightly when she thought no one was looking. It wasn't the first time. In the past 2 weeks, he had noticed signs. Martha looking more tired than usual, losing weight, sometimes too pale. When he asked, she always said she was fine, just tired from old age. But Silas knew those signs. He had seen them in his own mother. Martha, he said when Josie went to the bathroom, you need to see a doctor. I don't need a doctor. It's just a bit of tiredness. This isn't tiredness. Martha looked at him with an expression that mixed irritation and fear. Silas, I know you worry, but... Another groan of pain interrupted her. This time she bent forward, clutching the right side of her back. That's it. We're going to the hospital now. I can't leave Josie alone. Josie's coming with us. Martha tried to protest, but the pain was too intense. Silas helped her sit on the sofa while explaining to Josie that they were going for a little ride to make sure Grandma was okay. In the car, Martha was quiet, breathing with difficulty. Josie, in the back seat, held her grandma's hand through the space between the seats. Does it hurt a lot, Grandma Martha? No, dear, just a little discomfort. But Silas saw in the rearview mirror how tense Martha's face was, how she squeezed her eyes shut whenever the car bumped. The nearest hospital was a large, busy building. Silas parked in the emergency bay and helped Martha out of the car. She could barely walk straight. I need a wheelchair over here, he called out to an employee. The wait in the emergency room felt endless. Josie was restless, asking when they would leave, if Grandma was okay, if she could buy a snack from the vending machine. Silas tried to distract her with games and conversation, but his attention was completely focused on Martha. Finally, her name was called. I'm going with her, Silas said, standing up. Are you a relative? Silas hesitated for a second. I'm her son. The nurse didn't question it. Martha was too weak to correct him. In the consultation room, the doctor asked a series of questions about her symptoms. How long had she been in pain? Did the pain radiate to other places? Had she lost weight? Did she feel nauseous? Martha answered reluctantly, minimizing everything. But when the doctor asked how long the symptoms had started, she was silent for a long moment. A few months, she finally said. A few months. Silas looked at her incredulously. Why didn't you seek help sooner? Martha didn't answer. The doctor ordered a series of tests: blood, X-ray, ultrasound. During the hours that followed, Silas stayed in the waiting room with Josie, who had finally fallen asleep in one of the uncomfortable chairs. When Martha returned from the tests, she was even paler. "The results will be ready in a few hours," she said, sitting heavily next to Silas. "Why didn't you tell me you'd been feeling unwell for months?" Martha looked at Josie, who was sleeping, before answering. "Because I know these signs, Silas. I've taken care of sick people my whole life. I knew what it could be, and I didn't want to worry Josie. But you could have gotten treatment sooner. You could have... With what money?" Martha's voice was harsher than usual. "Do you think I didn't want to get help? Tests are expensive. Treatments are expensive. I can barely pay the basic bills." Silas felt like he'd been punched. During all those weeks visiting their home, helping with small repairs and bringing food, he had never realized how serious Martha's financial situation was. "Martha, I could have helped. I can help now. I know, and I'm grateful for everything you do for us, but it's not easy for me to accept charity. It's not charity, it's family taking care of family." Martha looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "You truly have become family to us, haven't you?" Before Silas could answer, the doctor appeared in the waiting room. "Mrs. Martha Ray, can we talk about the results?" Back in the consultation room, the doctor got straight to the point. "The tests show a tumor in the pancreas. Given its size and location, I'm concerned it's an advanced stage cancer." The world stopped. Silas heard the words, but for a moment couldn't process their meaning. Cancer, advanced stage, the same words he had heard about his mother 15 years ago. "How much? How long?" Martha asked, her voice almost a whisper. "It's hard to say for sure without more tests. But if it's what I suspect, perhaps a few months, maybe a year if she responds well to treatment. And the treatment, chemotherapy, possibly surgery, depending on how the tumor responds. But I need to be honest. In cases like this, treatment is more about controlling symptoms and providing quality of life than about curing." Silas felt tears start to fall before he even realized he was crying. He tried to control himself, but the emotion was too strong. The idea of losing Martha, of seeing Josie go through what he had gone through when he lost his mother, was unbearable. "Silas," Martha reached out to him. "I'm sorry." He wiped his face with his hands. "It's just, I've been through this before. With my mother." The doctor watched them with compassion. "I'll give you a few minutes to process the information. When you're ready, we can discuss treatment options." When they were alone, Martha held Silas's hand. "Don't cry for me." "How can I not cry? I just found you. Only now do I understand what it's like to have a real family, and now you're going to have to be strong for me, for Josie." Silas nodded, trying to compose himself. "Biggs, we're going to fight this. I'll pay for the best doctors and the best treatments. We'll do everything possible." "Silas, no. I won't take no for an answer. You did everything for your granddaughter. You cared for my mother when she was alone. Now it's my turn to care for you." Martha smiled through her own tears. "All right. We'll try." They returned to the waiting room, where Josie was still sleeping. The doctor explained that Martha would need to start treatment as soon as possible, that there would be hospitalizations, chemotherapy sessions, many difficult days ahead. It was almost midnight when they finally left the hospital. Josie had woken up but was too sleepy to ask many questions. In the car, she just asked if Grandma was better now. "I am, dear," Martha replied. "The doctors are going to help me get well." When they got home, Silas helped Martha settle on the sofa while Josie brushed her teeth. The girl was clearly too tired to grasp the seriousness of the situation. "Josie," Martha called when the girl returned from the bathroom. "Come give Grandma a goodnight kiss." Josie ran to hug her grandma. "Will you be better tomorrow?" "I'll be a little better every day," Martha said, kissing the girl's forehead. After Josie went to sleep, Martha and Silas sat in the living room in silence for a long time. "Silas," Martha finally spoke, "I need to ask you something. Anything. If something happens to me, do you promise you won't leave my granddaughter alone?" Silas looked at her, seeing the fragility in her eyes. "Martha, you're going to be fine. The treatments will... Promise." The seriousness in her voice made Silas understand that she needed to hear that promise. She needed to be sure that Josie would be safe, no matter what happened. "I promise." Martha sighed with relief. "There are things you need to know about Josie, about our family. You don't need to talk about that now." "I do. 'Cause if I get too weak to speak, you need to know the truth." Silas leaned forward, paying attention. "Josie has a mother, Evelyn, my daughter. I thought, you always talk as if it's just the two of you." "Because it is. Evelyn abandoned Josie when she was born." Martha's voice turned bitter. "She was 19, she was scared. She said she wasn't ready to be a mother. She left the baby with me and disappeared." Silas was in shock. She never reappeared. Never. Not a letter, not a call, as if Josie didn't exist. Martha wiped a tear. "Josie doesn't know this. She thinks her mother died when she was a baby. I never had the courage to tell her the truth. Why? Because it's easier for a child to deal with death than with abandonment. Death is no one's fault. Abandonment, a child always thinks it's their fault." Silas thought about how Josie talked about family, how she never questioned her mother's absence, how she naturally accepted that it was just her and her grandmother. "And where is Evelyn now?" "I don't know. Last I heard she was living in another city, but that was 2 years ago." "Did you try to contact her?" "Once. When Josie turned 4, I thought maybe she had changed, matured, but she made it clear she didn't want anything to do with her daughter." Martha leaned forward, taking Silas's hands. "If something happens to me, Josie will be alone in the world. The system will try to find Evelyn, and maybe she'll agree to take Josie just to receive some government benefit. But she doesn't love this child. Never did. And you want me to? I want you to protect Josie, whatever it takes. She deserves a family that truly loves her." Silas felt the weight of the responsibility Martha was placing on his shoulders, but when he thought of Josie, her joy, her innocence, her colorful drawings, the decision was automatic. "I promise, Martha, I will protect Josie. I won't let anything bad happen to her." Martha hugged him, and Silas felt how fragile she was, how much weight she had lost in the past few weeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "Now I can focus on fighting this illness, knowing that, no matter what happens, my granddaughter will be safe." Silas hugged her back, silently making a promise not only to Martha, but to himself. He would do everything in his power to help Martha recover. But if the worst happened, Josie would never feel abandoned or alone. She would have a family. She would have him. As Silas drove home that night, the doctor's words echoed in his mind. A few months, maybe a year. But he refused to accept that sentence. Martha had cared for his mother with love and dedication. Now it was his turn to return that care. And no matter what happened, he would keep his promise. Josie would always have someone who loved her. Silas never imagined that making scrambled eggs could be so complicated. He was in Martha's kitchen at 6:30 in the morning, staring at the frying pan where the eggs had turned into a sticky, brown mess. Josie was sitting at the table, swinging her legs and observing his culinary efforts with scientific interest. "I think you stirred too much," she commented. "It looks like it." Silas turned off the stove and looked at the disastrous result. How about toast with jam? Grandma Martha always makes eggs very slowly, stirring just a little at a time. It was the 3rd day Silas was taking care of Josie, while Martha underwent her first round of chemotherapy in the hospital. The treatment would require 3 days of hospitalization, and there was no discussion about where Josie would stay. "I'll take care of her," Silas had told Martha when she tried to protest. "It's just for a few days." But a few days had proven more challenging than running a tech company. "It's all right, let's try again." Silas tossed the burnt eggs into the trash and got 2 more. "This time, you teach me." Josie hopped off her chair and dragged a stool near the stove. "First, you crack the eggs into a bowl, not straight into the pan. Grandma Martha always says it's easier to get the shells out if they fall." Silas followed the 5-year-old's instructions, feeling slightly ridiculous, but determined to get it right. He cracked the eggs into the bowl, stirred them lightly, and poured them into the pan on the lowest heat. "Now stir very slowly, just a little bit." This time, the eggs were creamy and golden. Josie clapped her hands. "You did it. Now you know how to make eggs like a grown-up." Silas laughed. He had spent years negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts, but he had never felt as proud of an accomplishment as he did at that moment. After breakfast came the task of tidying the house. Silas discovered that Josie had very specific opinions about how things should be done. "The bedding has to be really smooth, otherwise Grandma Martha will be sad when she comes back," she explained, pulling the sheets with her small hands. "Sad how?" "She always says a tidy home shows we care. And she cares a lot about our home." Silas watched Josie carefully smooth the sheet, trying to imitate the movements she must have seen Martha make hundreds of times. There was something touching about the seriousness with which she approached these simple tasks. "Can I help you?" "Of course." "You take that side and I'll take this one." Together they made Martha's bed, then Josie's. Silas learned that the pillows had to be at specific angles, that Josie's teddy bear had a special place on the pillow, and that the curtains should be opened in a particular way to let in the right amount of light. "Grandma Martha says every house has its own music," Josie explained as she folded her little clothes. "And our music is happy, so everything has to be in the right place for the music to play beautifully." By late morning, Silas was exhausted in a way he had never experienced. It wasn't the mental fatigue of endless meetings or complex spreadsheets. It was a physical tiredness, but also a satisfying one. The house was clean, Josie was fed and happy, and he had managed to keep everything running. "Now we can play," Josie announced, as if it were a reward for a job well done. They sat on the living room floor with a box of puzzles. Josie chose a 50-piece one with farm animal designs. "This one is hard," she said, showing a piece with part of a cow. "But Grandma Martha always says that hard things get easier when you don't give up." As they put the puzzle together, Josie told stories about each animal. The cow was named Bessie and liked classical music. The piglet was mischievous and always ran off to eat apples in the orchard. The chickens had complicated names she had invented. "Where do these stories come from?" Silas asked, impressed by the girl's creativity. "From my head. Grandma Martha says everyone has stories in their head, but not everyone knows how to get them out." At lunchtime, Silas tried to make sandwiches. This time, Josie was his official assistant, passing him ham and cheese while he spread mayonnaise on the bread. "You're getting good at this," she said, taking a bite of her sandwich. "At first you were kind of bad at making food, but now you're almost like a real grown-up." "Almost?" "Grandma Martha puts love in the food. You're still learning to put love in, too." "How do you put love in food?" Josie thought seriously about the question. "I think it's when you make food thinking about the person who's going to eat it. Like, Grandma Martha always cuts my sandwich into 4 pieces because she knows I like it that way. Or when she makes heart shapes in the pancakes on days I'm sad." Silas understood. It wasn't about technique or skill. It was about attention, care, knowing the person you were cooking for. "Next time I'll put love in, too." "I'll teach you." In the afternoon, Josie dozed off on the sofa while Silas tried to work on his laptop. But he kept finding himself looking at her more than at the screen, the way she slept with her fist clenched near her face, how her hair fell over her eyes, how she occasionally smiled in her sleep. When she woke up, they went to the small backyard to water the flowers Martha cared for so dearly. "This one's my favorite," Josie said, pointing to a yellow rose. "Grandma Martha planted it when I turned 4. She said it would grow with me." "And has it grown?" "It's growing. Grandma Martha says the best things in life grow slowly." When night fell, Silas realized he would be responsible for putting Josie to bed. He had never done that before and felt lost. "Cass, how does bedtime work?" "First I brush my teeth, then I put on my pajamas. Then you tell me a story," Josie recited as if it were an instruction manual. "What if I don't know any stories?" "Everyone knows stories. You just have to find one in your head." After Josie brushed her teeth and put on pink pajamas with star designs, they sat on her bed. The room was small but cozy, with drawings taped to the walls and stuffed animals neatly arranged on a shelf. "What kind of story do you want?" "One about people who like each other very much," she said, snuggling under the blanket. Silas thought for a moment and began, "Once upon a time, there was a man who lived alone in a very tall apartment. He told a story about a man who discovered that true wealth wasn't in money or expensive things, but in the people he learned to love. Josie listened attentively, occasionally asking questions or suggesting details for the story. "And they lived happily ever after?" she asked when he finished. "They're learning to live happily ever after," Silas corrected. "Just like real life." Josie smiled sleepily. "You're a good storyteller," she yawned. "Can you be my big friend forever?" "Your big friend?" "Yes. Grandma Martha is my small family, and you can be my big friend. Big friends take care of us when we need it." Silas felt something tighten in his chest, a mixture of tenderness and responsibility he had never experienced before. "I'd love to be your big friend, Josie. Promise?" "I promise." She closed her eyes, satisfied. "Good night, my big friend." "Good night, Josie." Silas sat on the edge of the bed until he was sure she was sound asleep. Then he left the room and sat in the living room, finally having a moment to reflect on the past few days. He had discovered muscles he didn't know existed, learned that 5-year-olds were more complicated than any business project, and realized that being truly needed was completely different from being important at work. At the office, he was replaceable. There was always someone who could do what he did, perhaps even better. But here, in this small, simple house, he was irreplaceable. Josie needed him. Martha trusted him. And for the first time in a long time, Silas felt exactly where he was supposed to be. Martha returned home on a Thursday afternoon, thinner than when she had left, but with a determined smile on her face. The first cycle of chemotherapy had been tough, but she was on her feet, breathing, fighting. "Grandma Martha!" Josie ran to hug her grandma's legs with such force that she almost knocked her over. "Careful, dear," Silas gently intervened. "Grandma Martha is still recovering." "It's okay," Martha laughed, stroking Josie's hair. "Toys, I missed these hugs." Silas carried Martha's small suitcase into the house. The place was spotless. He and Josie had spent the entire morning cleaning and organizing everything for her arrival. "You took great care of the house," Martha observed, looking around the living room. "And great care of each other from what I see." "Silas learned how to make eggs," Josie announced proudly. "And he tells bedtime stories, and he knows how to make a bed like a grown-up." Martha looked at Silas with gratitude. "Thank you for everything." "No need to thank me." In the following days, they resumed a nearly normal routine. Martha still tired easily and needed a lot of rest, but she was home. She was alive. She was present. Silas continued visiting daily, helping with the heavier tasks and spending time with Josie. It was on a Tuesday, almost a week after Martha's return, that everything changed again. Silas was helping Josie with a puzzle in the living room, while Martha prepared lunch in the kitchen. The doorbell rang, and Josie jumped up to answer it. "I'll get it," she shouted, running to the door. "Josie, wait," Martha called from the kitchen. "Ask who it is first." But Josie had already opened the door. From the sofa, Silas heard a woman's voice he didn't recognize. "Hi, sweetie, you must be Josie." There was an odd silence, then Martha's hurried footsteps from the kitchen. Silas got up and went to the entrance. At the door stood a woman of about 25, well-dressed, with neatly cut blonde hair and impeccable makeup. She wore an expensive coat and carried a designer bag. Her eyes, the same brown eyes as Josie's, were fixed on the girl with an expression of nervousness and regret. Martha had stopped in the middle of the living room, pale as if she had seen a ghost. "Evelyn," she whispered. The woman looked up from Josie to Martha. "Hi, Mom." The silence that followed was deafening. Josie looked from the woman to Martha, then to Silas, clearly confused. "Who is she?" "Grandma Martha." Evelyn knelt down to Josie's height, trying to smile. I'm your mommy, sweetie." Josie's reaction was immediate and intense. She took a step back, shaking her head vigorously. "No, you're not. My mommy died when I was a baby." "Grandma Martha told me." "Josie, dear, I can't explain." "You're not my mommy," Josie screamed, running to hide behind Silas. "My mommy is in heaven. Grandma Martha said so." Silas immediately placed a protective hand on Josie's shoulder, feeling the little girl's body tremble. Evelyn knelt in the doorway, her face contorted in pain at her daughter's rejection. "No, I didn't die. I went away, but now I'm back." "I don't want you here," Josie cried, clinging to Silas's leg. "Go away, I don't need you." Evelyn started to cry. "Josie, please, let me explain." "No!" Josie's voice echoed through the house. "You're not my mommy. My family is Grandma Martha and my big friend." "Go away!" Silas stepped forward, placing himself completely between Evelyn and Josie. "I think it's better if we talk when she's calmer," he said firmly. Martha finally found her voice, still in shock. "What do you want here, Evelyn?" "Can I come in? Please, I need to explain." "No!" Josie screamed again. "She can't come in. This is our house." Martha looked at her agitated granddaughter, then at her daughter kneeling in the doorway, then at Silas. The situation was impossible. "Josie, go to your room," she said softly. "The grown-ups need to talk. I don't want to leave you alone with her. What if she hurts you?" "She won't hurt anyone," Silas said calmly. "I'll stay here and take care of everything. You can go." Josie looked at Evelyn suspiciously before running upstairs to her room, slamming the door shut. Evelyn slowly stood up, wiping her tears. "She hates me." "What did you expect?" Martha asked, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. "That she'd run into your arms after 5 years?" I hoped maybe. You abandoned your daughter, Evelyn. You said she was dead. To a 5-year-old, and you literally don't exist." Evelyn hesitantly entered the house, sitting on the edge of the sofa, as if she didn't feel entitled to be comfortable. "You have some nerve," Martha continued. 5 years, Evelyn. 5 years without a word, without knowing if your daughter was alive or dead. I know I don't have the right to be here." "No, you don't." Silas watched the interaction, torn between protecting Josie and trying to understand Evelyn's motivations. Upstairs, he could hear the girl sobbing in her room. "So why are you here now?" Martha asked. "Because I grew up. Because I regretted all the choices I made. Because not a day goes by that I don't think about her." "And it took you 5 years to think of that." Evelyn took a deep breath. "I was a child when Josie was born. I was 19, scared, had no money, no support from her father. When I looked at that baby, all I felt was panic. And you thought running away was the solution. I thought she'd be better off without me, that you'd know how to care for her better than I ever could." Martha shook her head. "That doesn't justify you disappearing completely. It doesn't justify it. Nothing justifies it." Evelyn looked at Martha with tear-filled eyes. "I was weak, scared, and I ran. But I came back. Can I start over?" "Start over?" Martha stood up abruptly. "You heard your daughter. She doesn't want you here. She doesn't know me. If I just had a chance to explain..." "Explain what?" "That you lied to her for 5 years. That you abandoned her when she needed you most." From upstairs, Josie's sobs grew louder. Silas stood up. "I'll check on her." In the room, he found Josie curled up in bed, crying into her pillow. "Hey, what's wrong?" "I don't like her," Josie said between sobs. "I don't want a new mommy. I like my family the way it is." Silas sat on the edge of the bed. "Nobody's going to change our family, Josie. The 3 of us will always be family. But what if she wants to take me away? What if she doesn't like you and Grandma Martha?" "That won't happen. I promise." "How can you promise?" "Because I'll never let anyone separate our family. Remember, you're my responsibility now." Josie sat up and hugged him tightly. "I don't want a mom. I want you and Grandma Martha, and you'll have both of us forever." When they returned to the living room, Evelyn was still there, talking quietly with Martha. Josie immediately hid behind Silas again. "Josie," Evelyn tried again, her voice soft. "I know you're confused. I know it's a lot to take in all at once." "I'm not confused," Josie replied, her voice still trembling but determined. "I don't want you here." "I understand, but can I try to show you that I've changed, that I'm different now?" "No." "Josie," Martha gently intervened, "how about you go draw a bit while we finish talking? I don't want to leave you alone with her." "I'll stay here," Silas reassured her. "I won't leave the room." Reluctantly, Josie picked up some paper and colored pencils, but sat on the floor very close to Silas, clearly on guard. "What exactly do you want, Evelyn?" Silas asked. "I want to get to know my daughter. I want to be a part of her life, if she'll let me. I want to be the mother I should have been from the beginning." "I already have family," Josie said without looking up from her drawing. "I don't need anyone else." The words hit Evelyn like a slap, but she didn't give up. "Where have you been all these years?" Martha asked. "I in Seattle first, then Los Angeles. I finished college, started working at a marketing firm. I got married last year." Evelyn paused. "My husband knows about Josie. He's the one who encouraged me to come back." "How convenient. Now that your life is settled, you remember you have a daughter." "It wasn't like that. I always knew. I always carried this guilt. But it took me years to be brave enough to admit I was wrong." "And now you know?" Josie suddenly asked, her voice carrying an impressive sarcasm for a 5-year-old. "I'm learning. I'd like to learn with you, if you'll let me. I don't want to teach you anything. I want you to go away." Evelyn was silent for a long moment, clearly hurt but trying to compose herself. "I understand why you don't like me. I deserve it." "Do you really?" "Yes, but I won't give up. Even if it takes a long time, even if you never forgive me, I'll keep trying." "Why?" "Because you're my daughter, and I love you. Even if it took me a long time to be brave enough to come back and say it." Josie finally looked up from her drawing. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have left." The brutal simplicity of the observation left everyone silent. Evelyn started to cry again. "You're right. If I loved you the right way, I would have stayed. I would have found a way. But I was too young and too selfish to understand what love truly means. And now you understand. I'm trying to understand. Every day." Josie went back to drawing, clearly thinking. "You can stay for lunch," she finally said, without looking up. "But then you have to go, and you can't come back tomorrow." Martha and Silas exchanged surprised glances. It was a small step forward, but a step forward nonetheless. "Thank you," Evelyn said softly. Lunch was extremely tense. Josie answered Evelyn's questions in monosyllables, when she answered at all. When Evelyn asked about school, Josie was emphatic. "Silas is going to put me in a school. He really takes care of me. I wanted to take care of you too." Too late. After lunch, Evelyn prepared to leave as promised. Can I come back next week?" "No," Josie replied immediately. "Josie," Martha gently intervened, "how about she just comes back for a quick visit?" "Why, she already left once. She'll leave again." Evelyn knelt down to Josie's height. "I promise you, if you give me a chance, I'll never leave again. Never again. Everyone says that. Then they change their mind." "I won't change my mind. How can I be sure?" "You can't be sure. I'll have to prove it to you one day at a time." Josie thought for a long moment. "If you come back, you have to bring something useful. Not toys, useful things." "Like what?" "Food for Grandma Martha. Or tools for Silas to fix things. Things that help our family." The specificity of the request surprised everyone. Josie didn't want gifts to win her affection. She wanted Evelyn to prove her worth by contributing to the existing family. "Okay, I'll bring useful things. And you can't stay too long, an hour at most." "Okay. And if I tell you to leave, you leave." "No arguing." "Okay," Josie nodded, as if closing a business deal. "You can come back on Saturday. For 1 hour." Evelyn returned on Saturday, bringing groceries for the pantry and a small toolbox for Silas. Josie watched everything with critical eyes, clearly evaluating whether Evelyn was upholding her part of the agreement. During the visit, Josie kept her distance, but at least she didn't ask Evelyn to leave before the agreed time. "You can come back next week," she said when the hour was up. But still, only for 1 hour. Slowly, the visits became a strange routine. Evelyn would come, bring useful things, try to talk to Josie, help Martha with small tasks, and leave when told. Josie gradually started answering her questions with more than one word. Then she started showing her drawings. Then she allowed Evelyn to help with the puzzle. "She's trying," Martha admitted one evening after Evelyn had left. "Do you think she's sincere?" "I think so. And Josie is starting to accept it, even if she doesn't admit it." It was true. Silas had noticed small changes. Josie had stopped hiding behind him when Evelyn arrived. She had started to occasionally include her in conversations, and once he had seen Josie keep a drawing that Evelyn had praised. "Aren't you afraid?" Martha asked. That she'll want to take Josie away. I am, but I also see how Josie is handling it. She's not falling in love with Evelyn. She's evaluating whether Evelyn deserves to be part of our family. Our family, Martha repeated softly. That's what we are, aren't we? 2 weeks later, Silas arrived for his usual visit and found Martha and Evelyn sitting at the kitchen table, talking quietly while Josie drew in the living room. May I interrupt? Of course, Martha said. We were talking about the future. Silas sat down, cautious. And did you come to a conclusion? Evelyn spoke first. I want to be a part of Josie's life, but I understand that you two are her family now. I don't want to take that away from her. I want to join you if you'll let me. What do you mean? I want to help financially, emotionally, in whatever way is needed. I want Josie to have the best possible education, the best medical care, all the opportunities I can offer. But I want her to continue living here with you if that's what makes her happy. From the living room, Josie's voice could be heard. I heard everything, and I have one condition. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, serious as a small executive. If you want to be part of our family, you have to promise one thing. What? You have to promise that you will never, ever try to take me away from here. This is my home. Grandma Martha and Silas are my family. If you want to be family too, you have to accept that. Evelyn looked at her daughter, seeing the determination in her small eyes. I promise. This will always be your home. They will always be your primary family. Josie nodded, satisfied. Then you can start coming twice a week instead of once, but you still can't stay too long. There was no instant forgiveness. The conversations between Martha and Evelyn were still weighted with years of hurt. Josie still treated Evelyn with careful caution, more like a person earning her right to be there than as a mother. But there was something more important. There was hope, and room for a family to grow in ways none of them had imagined possible. "Ursa, my big friend," Josie said to Silas the next night, "do you think families can be different sizes?" "What do you think?" "I think so. And I think ours is getting a little bigger, just a little bit, but it is." And perhaps that was exactly what was happening. A family rebuilding itself, one person at a time, one promise at a time, with great care and much love. Josie woke up before her alarm clock. Silas found her in the kitchen at 6:30 in the morning, already dressed in her new school uniform, a navy blue skirt, white blouse, and a small cardigan with the St. John's Elementary School emblem. She was sitting at the table, swinging her legs nervously. "Someone's excited," he said, kissing the top of her head. "I'm a little scared too," Josie admitted. "What if the other kids don't like me?" "Impossible not to like you." Martha appeared in the kitchen, still in her robe, but smiling. "My little granddaughter is going to a real school," she said, her eyes shining. Over the past 3 months since Evelyn had reappeared, she had visited almost daily. What started as tense visits had evolved into something natural. Josie not only accepted Evelyn's presence, but had begun to actively seek her out. "Where's Evelyn?" Josie asked. "Still sleeping. She was nervous last night, just like you." "She was nervous because of me." "She was. Said she wanted everything to go well for you." Josie hopped down from her chair and went to the living room sofa where Evelyn was sleeping, gently shaking her. "Evelyn, my first day of school is here." Evelyn opened her eyes, disoriented for a moment, then smiled when she saw Josie. "Good morning, my love. Are you ready for the big adventure?" These "my love" had started a few weeks ago, when Josie allowed Evelyn to use the endearment. Now it sounded natural, accepted. "I am. Can you help me braid my hair? I want it to be special." "Of course I can." During breakfast, Josie chatted about her nervousness for the first day, but also about her excitement. Evelyn listened attentively, carefully braiding Josie's hair as they talked. "Do you think I'll make friends?" Josie asked. "I'm absolutely sure," Evelyn replied, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "You're smart, funny, and you have a huge heart." Silas watched the interaction with satisfaction. The transformation in their relationship had been gradual but steady. Evelyn had proven her dedication day after day. "Are you all going to take me to school?" Josie asked. "All of us," Martha confirmed. "It's a very special day." "It's the most special day," Josie agreed. then looked directly at Evelyn. "Thank you for being here. I know you had to work today." "There's nowhere in the world I'd rather be," Evelyn answered sincerely. St. John's Elementary School was a red brick building with a large playground and well-kept gardens. When they arrived, other children were being dropped off by their parents, all looking nervous and excited. Silas held one of Josie's hands, and to his surprise, she extended the other to Evelyn. "Can you two take me together?" "Of course, sweetie," Evelyn said, emotional to be included. Martha walked beside them, watching with shining eyes. In the past few months, she had seen her daughter truly change, mature, transform into the mother Josie deserved. At the door of the kindergarten classroom, they were greeted by Teacher Helen, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile. "You must be Josie," she said, kneeling to the girl's height. "I'm so excited to have you in my class." "I'm a little nervous," Josie admitted. "That's normal. But look at how many new friends you're going to make." Teacher Helen showed Josie the room, the colorful little tables, the reading area with cushions, the art supplies organized on low shelves. "This is your spot," the teacher said, showing a small table with Josie's name tag. "And this is Sarah, who will sit next to you." Sarah was a curly-haired girl who waved shyly at Josie. "Hi," Josie said, still holding Silas's and Evelyn's hands. "Hi, I like your uniform." "Thanks, my mom made my hair special for today," Josie said, touching the braids Evelyn had done. It was the first time Josie had referred to Evelyn as "my mom" in front of other people. Evelyn felt her eyes well up with tears of joy. "I think it's time for us to say goodbye," Teacher Helen said gently. It was at that moment that Josie let go of their hands and ran to Silas, hugging his waist tightly. "You'll pick me up, right?" Silas felt his eyes fill with tears. He bent down and hugged Josie back, seeing Martha and Evelyn watching from the door, both emotional. "Always," he said, his voice slightly hoarse. "I'll always come pick you up." "Promise?" "I promise." Josie then turned to Evelyn and hugged her too. "Will you be home when I get back? I'll be waiting to hear all about your first day. And you, Grandma Martha." "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Josie waved to all of them before sitting next to Sarah, already starting an animated conversation about her colored pencils. Outside the classroom, Martha wiped her eyes with a tissue. "She's grown so much," she murmured. "Aren't she so happy?" Evelyn added. "You two worked miracles with her." "We all did," Martha corrected, looking meaningfully at Evelyn, "especially you, in these last few weeks." "I still can't believe she called me Mom in front of the teacher." "You earned that right," Silas said, "one day at a time." The first weeks of school established a wonderful new routine. Silas picked Josie up every afternoon at 3 o'clock, and she always ran into his arms full of stories. But now Evelyn was always there too, and Josie equally divided her attention between her two favorite grown-ups. "Today I learned about primary colors," she recounted one afternoon, sitting between Silas and Evelyn in the back seat of the car. "And I drew a family with 4 people. 4 people?" Evelyn asked. "You, Silas, Grandma Martha, and me." "Teacher Helen said my family drawing was beautiful. She asked if you two are married." Josie giggled. "I said no, but that you're the best parents in the world anyway." Silas and Evelyn exchanged a glance in the rearview mirror. They had developed a natural partnership in caring for Josie. "And what else did you learn?" Silas asked. "That families come in all different kinds. Sarah lives with just her dad. Tommy lives with 2 moms. And I live with the best blended family in the world." At home, they found Martha in the living room, visibly stronger since she had started responding well to treatment. Evelyn had taken over many of the household chores, allowing Martha to focus on recovering. "How was school today, my treasure?" Martha asked when Josie threw herself onto the sofa next to her. "Amazing." Teacher Helen said, "I'm going to jump straight to 1st grade next semester because I can read so well already." "That's wonderful," Evelyn exclaimed. "You're so smart." "It's because you all taught me well. Grandma Martha taught me my letters, Silas taught me to ask smart questions, and you taught me to love books." That night, during dinner, Josie made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I forgive you, Mom." Evelyn stopped eating, her fork suspended in the air. "What, dear?" "I forgive you for leaving when I was a baby." Teacher Helen said forgiving is when you stop being mad at someone who did something wrong, and I'm not mad at you anymore. Evelyn started to cry silently. Why aren't you mad anymore? Because you came back, and because you really love me now, and because you take care of Grandma Martha too, and because you make Silas smile. Josie paused. And because I love you too. It was the first time Josie had said, I love you to Evelyn. The reaction was immediate. Evelyn stood up and hugged her daughter tightly, openly weeping. I love you so much, Josie. So much there are no words to explain. I know, Josie replied simply. Now you can stop feeling guilty. You're forgiven. Martha and Silas watched the moment with tear-filled eyes. It was the closure everyone needed. The months that followed settled into an increasingly harmonious routine. Josie thrived at school, making friends quickly. Martha continued to respond well to treatment. Evelyn had become a constant and beloved presence. And Silas had found his place as the family's big friend, the man who had arrived as a stranger and become indispensable. One Sunday afternoon, almost 4 months after Josie's first day of school, they were all in the small backyard of the house. Autumn had arrived, painting the tree leaves with shades of gold and red. Evelyn was serving tea in mismatched cups, a tradition that had started a few weeks prior. Martha was sitting in a garden chair, watching with a peaceful smile on her face. Josie was on Evelyn's lap, reading aloud a book she had brought from school. Once upon a time, there was a family that got lost and found each other, Josie read, clearly adapting the original story. A grandma got sick, but she got better because everyone took care of her. Mommy left, but she came back and said sorry. The big friend showed up out of nowhere and saved everyone, and the little girl learned that love can fix anything. That's a beautiful story, Martha said when Josie finished. It's our story, Josie explained, snuggling closer into Evelyn's embrace. Teacher Helen said the best stories are about real love. Silas watched the scene with a full heart. Evelyn kissed the top of Josie's head and whispered something that made him smile. Martha seemed at peace in a way he hadn't seen in months. Silas, Josie called him, can you come sit with us? He came closer and sat on the grass next to the chair where Evelyn and Josie were. Do you know what I found out at school? Josie continued. What? That some kids have parents who fight. Some have parents who don't live together. Some don't have a dad or don't have a mum. She looked around at all of them. But we have something special. We have a family that chose each other. What do you mean? Evelyn asked. Grandma Martha chose me when you couldn't take care of me. Silas chose us when he could have stayed in his rich life, and you came back and chose me again. Josie smiled. And I chose all of you too. That's why we're special. As Josie went inside to get more books, Martha approached Silas. Can I talk to you for a minute? They moved a little, to a more private corner of the backyard. I wanted to thank you, Martha began. For what? For everything. For showing up in our lives when we needed you most. For taking care of Josie when I couldn't. For giving me strength to fight this illness. For helping Evelyn find her way back to us. Martha, let me finish. She held his hands. You're not our blood, but you're part of our heart. The words hit Silas deeply. He looked around the backyard, at Evelyn helping Josie choose which book to read next, at the simple house that had become more important to him than his luxurious apartment. This is my family, he said softly. It's our family, Martha corrected, and it always will be. When they returned to the group, they found Josie showing Evelyn a drawing she had made at school. It's all 4 of us in the backyard, she explained. Look, I drew you braiding my hair, Grandma Martha smiling, and Silas watering the flowers, and there are hearts floating around everyone. Why hearts? Evelyn asked. Because love is what makes a family truly family. It doesn't matter if people were born together or found each other later. What matters is love. Silas sat beside them on the grass, accepting a cup of tea from Evelyn. Josie immediately snuggled between him and her mother, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Can I ask a question? Josie said. Of course, they all replied at the same time, making her giggle. Do you think we're going to be together forever? Silas looked at Martha, who despite her illness was getting stronger every day. He looked at Evelyn, who had transformed into the mother Josie deserved. He looked at Josie, the extraordinary girl who had changed all their lives. Forever, he answered with certainty. Promise. We promise, Evelyn said, kissing her daughter's head. We promise, Martha agreed. I promise, Silas confirmed. That night, after Josie went to sleep, after Martha went to rest, Silas and Evelyn sat on the small porch of the house. Thank you, Evelyn said softly. For what? For giving me a second chance. For helping Josie forgive me. For being the father she needed when I couldn't be the mother she deserved. You became that mother. With help, a lot of help. She smiled. Josie is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have all of you. It was true. Silas thought about the journey that had brought him there, from the lonely CEO who almost got hit by a truck on a busy street, to the man who was now part of a true family. He had found something he didn't know he was looking for. A purpose that went beyond professional success. A reason to wake up every morning that was all about love and commitment. From Josie's room, he heard a small voice calling, Silas, Mom, can you come say goodnight again? They looked at each other and smiled. We're coming, love, Evelyn replied. We're on our way, Silas added. And together, they walked towards the house where their family awaited them. A family that had been lost and found, that had learned to forgive and to love, that had discovered that blood doesn't determine who belongs in our heart. A family that, finally, was complete. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.